how would you define copywriting?
On a fundamental level, it's really just like the writing of ads. All we're really saying there is that we want the person who interacts with the ad, whether they read it, they hear it on the radio, they watch a video, to respond to it directly and to take a direct action.
Tell me about the RMBC method.
It stands for research, mechanism, brief, and copy, RMBC. It's really like a step-by-step assembly line approach to writing good copy, especially longer form copy.
What is up, After Hours entrepreneurs? Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Mark Savant, and today we're going to help you build your cash flow through copywriting. We got my man, Stefan Georgi, in the place. He's one of the world's most successful direct response copywriters, over $1 billion in sales for his companies that he's worked with. Truly tremendous. In this episode, Stefan is going to be breaking down a really important concept, which is building out a framework. He's going to share the framework that he uses to create sales. And then we're going to talk about AI and artificial intelligence and how that's going to be impacting people in the creative space, specifically in the copywriting space. Super interesting, super fascinating conversation. What do you say we get into it? This is Stefan Georgi. Yo, Stefan, what's up?
How you doing, Mark? It's good to be here.
Stefan, really good to have you here. Thanks for sharing a little bit of your time. You've accomplished a lot, bro. You've accomplished a lot. So I can't wait to just dig into that mind and then get out some copywriting techniques, brother. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, I'm very excited to share with your audience.
Cool. Well, listen, let's back it up a little bit. Let's go back in time. Let's hop in the DeLorean. We're going to go back to the future, back to 2011. When you just learned about copywriting. So tell me, what were you doing before you got into copywriting? And what was that moment where you're like, this might be something for me?
So I was a bit of like an unguided missile. That's what my dad called me shortly before he passed away. And him passing away ties into the getting into copywriting kind of journey for myself. So I'd been like I'd done everything from like door-to-door sales, worked in a call center for a for-profit college. I was a philosophy major, which I went to school, dropped out of school, worked for a startup failed, had a mild drug addiction, kicked that, went back to school, majored in philosophy, just all over the place, right? And so I had like a lot of kind of ambition and felt confident in myself as like a smart and creative person, but I didn't really know where to place it. And so right in 2011, I was working at an outdoor school in Marble Falls, Texas. So this guy had grown up going to the summer camp, went to like Harvard, got an MBA, went to finance, retired for a few $1 million, bought his childhood summer camp, and it was, as I would guess, a summer camp during the summer. But during the fall and the spring, he turned it into like an outdoor ed facility. So kids from all over Texas, especially underserved kind of youth, but really everyone would come and stay for a few days, like a week, and learn about nature and things like that. And so I was working there. I was in a double wide trailer making about $200 a week. I had a roommate and 5 to 6 other trailer mates, but they did provide camp food. So I had a lot of like pudding and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. But I was actually really happy. I was like really enjoying it because I was outside all the time. I was like the best shape of my life physically, because when I wasn't teaching kids about nature, they'd be like, hey, can you go chainsaw like these like wild shrubs and trees that are getting in the way of these hiking paths? So I was like just doing the like hard physical labor in the Texas sun. Like I loved it. And then I got the call that my dad had stage 4 cancer. It was a form of liver cancer, and that he didn't have much time. So I moved back home to I basically left that outdoor school. My plan had been to just sort of bounce around, go to summer camp and be an instructor there, then go back to the outdoor school. But I went back home to California and helped my mom and my dad for those last 4 months or so of his life. And then he passed away in October of 2011. And in November, I guess early December, I went to Las Vegas to kind of blow off steam and kind of decompress after that harrowing experience. And that's where I met a girl at a poker table and first discovered what copywriting was.
So I've listened to a lot of stories before, and most people do not find their future at a poker table. Most people. I'm not saying it's impossible, but how the heck do you put together playing poker in Las Vegas and copywriting? What happened there?
So it was luck, and I think a bit of that sort of, whatever you want to call it, God, the universe, or maybe fate, or maybe just crazy luck. But yeah, I was at this poker table, and I didn't have very much money at all. But in fact, I had lost most of the money I had the first night trying to play blackjack, and I had a couple $100 left that had to last me the rest of the weekend. So my buddy and I went and played poker the second day, and I won a couple $100. I played poker a bit when I was younger and kind of was okay at it. And then the last day, the third day on Sunday, we were playing. This girl walked into the poker room, and I saw her at Caesars. It was really big at the time. Now it's part of what is like Omnia or Omni, whatever their nightclub is. I think Omnia. But at the time, the poker room was this really massive thing still, because poker was still much more popular. And there was, I don't know, like 100 tables. So she walked in, and I said to my table, I hope she gets seated here. And people kind of laughed because, you know, other people noticed her as well. And but then she did, which is actually pretty crazy, because for anyone who's ever played poker at a casino, you don't just walk in and go sit down at a table. You see a host, somebody who is sort of like running the room, right? And then you say, I want to play, and they put you on a list, and there's a bunch of tables, and then they assign you a table based on how many spots are open at each table. So it's sort of like a luck of the draw thing. But she got seated at my table. And then, long story abridged a bit, you know, somebody asked her what she did for a living, and she said, I'm a writer. And I wanted to talk to her because I thought she was attractive. So I said, like, what kind of writer? And then she said, I'm a copywriter. And I was like, wow, a copywriter, that's so cool. And I pulled out whatever my first generation smartphone was, and under the poker table, I Googled what's a copywriter, because I had no idea. But that was my first introduction ever to copywriting, was right then and there.
Crazy, crazy, great. And fast forwarding a bit, the serendipity gets even deeper. Not only did this young woman set you on the course of your career path, which is in copywriting, but you also married her. So serendipity at best, you know. And I will also say again, results not typical when meeting people in Vegas, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, just put out there. So
yeah, that's true.
So you've come a long way. I'm sorry, I'm just having fun. We're getting off a Christmas break, and I'm just having fun here, people. I hope you are too. And I'm hoping that Stefan can bring you some fun. Speaking of which, if you go to spg.fun/research, Stefan's got a special gift for you. That's spg.fun/research. So I do kind of want to clarify something here. How would you define copywriting? Because I think it can be defined in different ways, Stefan. How would you define copywriting?
So on a fundamental level, it's really just like the writing of ads. So super easy, right? The type of copy I do primarily is what's referred to as direct response copywriting. So all we're really saying there is that we want the person who interacts with the ad, whether they read it, they hear it on the radio, they watch a video, to respond to it directly and to take a direct action. So when you hear ads that say, you know, pick up the phone and call 1-888 whatever, or text HAIR now for a free, you know, trial, or you're on a website that says click now to sign up, right? All we're doing is we're writing kind of persuasive content, or, you know, from an advertising perspective, that's getting somebody to try to take action. But turns out it's a lot harder to do that, you know, than one might expect, especially as you start asking for higher amounts of money. So getting somebody to give you an email address for a free report, like for the example of spg.fun/research, it's like the whole first module of my RMBC method. So it teaches you all these great ways to do psychographic research and understand your customer on a deeper level. And in exchange for that, you put in your email address, right? And then I'm not doing this as a pitch, I'm truly doing this as an example, right? Like my email list is really good. Like I've written some epic stuff. I'm talking about AI a bunch, all these amazing things on it. So to me, it's like a pretty low threshold transaction. But if I was like, you know, if you said go to spg.fun/research, give Stefan $1,000 or $5,000, and he's gonna give you this module, that's a very different conversation that I would need to have with you on that page. I could just have a couple little bullet points, a little sentence or two. It's like I would probably need, you know, an hour-long video of me talking about you and your pain points and your problems and what you're showing, that I really understand where you are, and then showing you a future that's radically different. And getting you emotionally connected and truly believing that if you gave me $1,000 or $5,000 or whatever it is, that I would change the outcome of your life by not just solving this urgent, desperate, bleeding neck pain point, but you know, I would do it quickly, effectively, that there's no better solution. There's so many other variables that come in. So that's what it is. And like, as I mentioned, that's why it's not as easy as it might sound at first glance, because it definitely depends on what you're selling and how much you're charging.
Yeah, well, it also depends on how well you can stand out in a world full of words. So much words, so much wording going on out there, so much copywriting. And, you know, I'm going to kind of foreshadow the future just a bit, because we're going to be talking about your special formulated method, the RMBC method. Before we get into that, though, I want to back it up just a little bit, because, you know, what I found to be a really important way to scale a business is to develop frameworks, to develop methods. You know, and you might not necessarily be completely changing the game with your methods, but we put together methods and frameworks that make it easy to understand, easy to go through, proprietary to us in our business, that also is going to deliver a result, right? So when you started off in copywriting, what did that look like for you? You first got into copywriting. Your wife, she's like, you know, you got to get into it. What was it like just starting off in the copywriting field?
It was exciting and terrifying. So it was exciting because there was the whole realization that I can be creative and write and sort of have fun and actually make money and make a good living. So that part was really exciting. The other side of it was, okay, well, if I'm not good at this, or I don't do well, then I'm not going to make a good living, and I'm going to have to figure that out. And that was a reality early on as well. And when I first jumped in, though, the biggest thing was just imitation, which is how it should be, right? In a way, it's like they talk about, you know, like an artist, first imitate the masters and then innovate. So imitate, then innovate. And I imitated, but I didn't have the frameworks or processes or really the underlying knowledge. So it still worked out because I'm not like sitting here and be like, oh, I'm so smart, but I'm smart in that way. I'm pretty good at, like, you show me something and I can kind of understand like the gist of it and replicate it pretty faithfully. And so I was able to do that decently well and have some success, but it was another like 2 years at least until I really started to understand like the why, and that like why what I was doing was working, and sort of like the deeper layers to it, which then made everything more consistent and predictable, which was very important for me.
Yeah, well, that's really important when you're teaching people how to do it. It's got to be predictable. It's got to be replicable. Even going a little bit deeper, right? What kind of jobs were you getting at that time? Were you just writing, you know, emails for companies, Facebook ads? Was this, you know, one job, you know, $150 for one job? How were you actually finding clients and generating cash, and what did those clients look like?
Yeah, so it was two different places. It was a website called Warrior Forum, which is actually still around today, because that's where my wife at the time, you know, new girlfriend, had some success, right? And so these were people selling sort of, I don't mean this disparagingly, but sort of like low-grade software. By that I mean it was sort of gimmicky, like Facebook ad scraper, like, you know, 2.0. This new thing will go and you know, take all the Facebook ads and find like the ones that are best for your niche, and then, you know, give you the template. It wasn't using AI, but it's funny in the context of today we almost think about AI, but sort of like, and then we'll like, you know, it'll write it for you, and it was sort of some basic programming, but some of them were quite good, and they'd work for a couple months, and then whoever created them would stop supporting them, and so it was this really weird, interesting marketplace for other marketers and selling tools and things like that for them. And they all needed a copy because they're all selling to each other. So I basically put like a classified, you know, copywriter for hire ad up there that was pretty good. And that's where I got my first clients, and they were paying like $149 for a sales letter, things like that. Whereas now I would charge like $50K pre-AI, which again, now I'm actually maybe charging less depending, which is an interesting dynamic. But there, and then Upwork. At the time it was Elance. But you know, I went to Upwork, and frankly, the first year or two, I would really just I looked at myself more as like a freelancer than a copywriter. So really, it was like anything that would pay me. So I did like SEO, like actual SEO. I would do SEO content writing. I built websites on WordPress. I didn't know how to do any of these things. I just I would like write copy for somebody and they'd be like, oh, I need a website. Do you know how to do that? And I'd be like, yeah, absolutely. And I go Google, like, how do you build a website and figure it out, right? Like, can you run Facebook ads? I'm like, for sure. Like, and I would never lie. I was never like, I'm the best at it. I'm just like, yeah, I can do it because I could do it. I knew with Google as my friend, right? And so I wrote somebody's like a couple people's term papers for them, like for their college, like theses and stuff like that. So I was doing whatever, honestly, just to not be broke and out on the street, to be honest with you.
I love it. Taking on all work, learning, like that's how you start your business. What's up, After Hours Entrepreneur? Mark here with an important message for you. You do not want to look bad and sound bad online. You don't want it, I don't want it, and your fans most certainly don't want it. I need to tell you from personal experience that the best way to improve the quality of your content is with Riverside.fm. Riverside.fm is my go-to for recording the highest quality podcast and video content from anywhere. So why use Riverside? Well, Riverside is going to give you the highest quality 4K video recordings. You're also going to get uncompressed, crispy, clean audio. Honestly, the best that I've seen. You're going to get separate tracks recorded when you're interviewing people and collaborating, which makes it very easy to change your audio levels. In fact, Riverside is even going to give you a video editor and social media clip creator directly within the program. Listen, it's time to avoid looking bad and start looking amazing. And the best way to do that is with Riverside.fm. Start free today and use code FRIENDSOFMARK for a special offer. Again, get started with Riverside.fm. Use code FRIENDSOFMARK and start looking and sounding like your best self today. All right, let's get back into the episode. Eventually, though, after a couple of years of getting in and digging in, you started to see probably a few things. Firstly, what is actually working?
Yeah.
Like, who is the problem? Who is the person that you want to help? What's the problem that you solve there? And you develop this RMBC method, which I want to hear a little bit more about it, because I think that for everyone listening there, if you don't have a framework built out into your business yet, I think it's really, really worth considering building out a framework. So tell me about the RMBC method. What does it stand for, and why is it important for copywriters to understand?
For sure. So it stands for research, mechanism, brief, and copy, RMBC. It's really like a step-by-step assembly line approach to writing good copy, especially longer form copy. And, it came about because out of necessity, which is often the mother of invention, right? I had a client, if we fast forward into 2014, that was a large publisher of informational products. So like ebooks, guides, how to, like things like reports, stuff like that. And they were like, hey, we're gonna do the Hollywood model. We want to put out as like a ton of like new sort of like funnels and websites and offers, meaning like, new products that we're gonna offer to the public. And we think that, 20% will do really well. Like some will be in the middle, some are gonna bomb. We don't care, we want volume and we want you to do it. And so we're talking about each one of those things. You're writing a script, like an infomercial script essentially, but just for online. That's like at the very short end, 5,500 words, often 8,000, pretty average, sometimes 10,000. And they incentivized me to where they're like, if you can do 4 of these a month, we'll pay you $1,000 each. If you can do 8 of them a month, we'll pay you $2,000 each. And if you can do 12 of them a month, we'll pay you $4,000 each. So there's a difference between making $4,000 a month or $48,000 a month. Plus there was some other sort of bonuses and things where I could get up to like $70,000 in a month. And I never made more than like $10,000 in a month, and the years fall, leading up to that as a freelancer.
Well, hold on. I just want to pause for a second here, because to most people, the idea of making 80K in a month writing is probably pretty eye-opening. How did you find that? How did you find that potential client or that particular client?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's some good fundamentals that I would share. Again, I think the title of this podcast can be like the world's luckiest boy, Stefan Georgi. But but it's both. It's a combination of like I get lucky, but I also make my luck, right? And so it was a client who had hired me on that Warrior Forum website, and I was charging $497 for a sales letter at that point. And he had said, hey, I'm going to pay you $1,000, make it really good. And so I'm like, oh my God, right? This guy paid me double. I'm going to make it really good. So I really just focused on it. I obsessed over, kind of just doing the best job I could. But he also said, by the way, here's my Skype, because Skype was very popular in the kind of digital marketer community at that time. It was pre-Slack really and things like that. So, message me if you want to chat or have questions. And so I generally, a lot of copywriters are pretty introverted, and they're like, oh, I don't, when a client wants to get on a call, it's like your heart sinks because you're like, no, not a call, right? But I'm like, all right, this guy's paying me more money, I should probably do it. And then the guy just starts like kind of pontificating, but it makes sense what he's saying. So he's sort of like talking about the structure of copy and like the rhythm, and he's giving me all of these resources. And so he helped me to kind of, and I guess where I make the luck is I actually listen to him, because I've now mentored thousands of copywriters. I can't tell you how many times they're in love with the idea of making money without having to work a lot, but the idea of actually getting good at the craft and working, it's like not as exciting for them or as appealing. So they don't, you have to put in the work, and I put in the work too. And basically what I wrote was good. He kept hiring me for more things. He was working with another partner in the sort of survival space. So like prepper people, like how to make your own home aquaponics system, all of that. I would write for them occasionally. They started mentoring me more. And then he moved to this new group that was doing information publishing in a wide variety of categories and niches. And to be honest too, I guess the first time, so I was doing an agency at the time, and I was like kind of tired of that because I realized having a ton of clients was sort of not that fun. And so I was like, I kind of miss the days where I'd write a video sales letter and I could, get paid a couple grand, and it's just me. And if I write it, I'm done. And there's no phone calls and all this stuff. So I'd reached out to him and been like, hey, I'm thinking about going back to just writing copy kind of full time and not doing this SEO stuff and building websites or whatever. Do you guys want to hire me to do that? And he said, no. I'm like, okay. But he's like, well, we got one project. We can do this one project, try it out. I'm like, okay. And I guess from a mindset perspective, I didn't say, well, what's the point? I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to still do my best damn job possible. And I wrote it, ended up doing really well for them, made a lot of sales. So then they came back and like, hey, actually, everything we just said, like, forget it. We'd love to have you come on. And from there, they had to come up with this sort of structure, and they did. And funnily enough, I'm not, can I say this one? And most of them, I haven't said their name. They're very private. These people still, it's nothing sketchy. It's like a Eastern European kind of cultural thing where they're just very like private about their stuff. But we just did another deal with them where they just paid myself and my two partners like a healthy 6 figures to do a new tranche of sort of things for them. And this is like 8-9 years later. So they're still a great client for us, but it always comes back to, doing the right thing. So the one other thing, Mark, I want to say though, just on an even more broad universal level, is like I really treated it like freelancing and copywriting as like a business, and I was in the service business. And how do I like provide the best service possible? So how do I communicate well, actually meeting deadlines, being like prompt, all these little things. Like if you go back, I have the screenshot of the first guy who ever hired me for a sales letter, Brian Zimmerman, and I sent in the copy. He's like, wow, like you're a day early. That's really surprising, because like nobody's like early, right? Especially a lot of copywriters. And so just treating it like a professional and treating like the customer, them as like a customer, and I'm in the customer service business. Like I got so many referrals that other people wouldn't get. I mean, just insane amounts of referrals. And so many of those people, another guy hired us in 2022 for a big project, and he's got like a, borderline unicorn startup company. Now it's like, it's crazy because there's a long tail where people are today is not where they're going to be tomorrow. So, you don't want to burn bridges and treat everybody well, but then just being like a professional goes such a long way, and it's such an easy thing to do. And yet anyone who has ever had a poor customer service experience can kind of realize that that's not how it often goes. So that's one really easy way, regardless of talent, ability, anything else. It's such an easy way to stand out. And it sounds almost too easy or too simple, but it's extremely powerful.
Well, I definitely agree with over delivering. I mean, just over the last couple of months, I brought back 2 clients that I had worked with in the past. I'd helped them launch podcasts, and then they're like, all right, we're going to do it on our own for now. And they came back a year later and said, hey, Mark, now we're ready. And I think your example with the copywriting, you did a great job for them then. And when you perform, people tend to come back, especially when when you can, one of the reasons I love the copywriting field too, is it's very easy, I think, to connect. I wrote this ad. This is how many sales came from it. I think it's nice when you're able to draw that connection, and certainly within your client's mind too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, getting data, and that's so important for anyone who's an aspiring copywriter, is like the data is so valuable, because otherwise you don't know how your stuff did. You don't know, did it perform well, did it perform poorly, but whether, you're writing for somebody else or for your own stuff too, right? Having that data is incredible. I just had a long-term friend, first-time client, today has been texting me. I wrote like a new thing for them for like a turmeric supplement, and they're great. They're like a really awesome brand. I can say it, Native Path. It's a great company. And he's like sending me like screenshots. So I'm like, I see the data. I know it's working, and he's sort of telling me like what the data means to them, and then there's updates. And so having that is so valuable. Plus, self-promotionally, I can go around and be like, hey, I just wrote this awesome thing. It's working really well. Isn't that great, everybody? By the way, send me a message. So that's always helpful too.
Yeah. Listen, testimonials, they definitely go a long way. I want to, before I move, I really want to talk about AI, artificial intelligence. We're going to get to that in just a minute, ladies and gentlemen. But I want to stay on this framework here for just another moment, the research mechanism, brief and copy method, the RMBC method that you devised. So you're working with this client, and they're telling you that if you scale up your production, they're going to scale up your compensation. Do you think it would have been possible for you to scale up to that many episodes if you didn't develop a framework? Do you think it would have been possible to meet that without the framework?
No, I don't think it would have been possible. I think that I hate saying that something's impossible, but it seems very unlikely, because it really forced me to have to look at copywriting as an assembly line type of process, which is true, because really it's like the same stuff again and again. This actually will tie into AI. We'll table that for a minute, but really like the whole point of RMBC was just like, how do I have efficiency at scale? And for these guys, scale was like 12 VSLs a month, which is a lot of scale still. With AI, I think the new scale might be like 30 or 50 VSLs a month, or like 60, right? Because AI is going to change a lot of stuff. But it's really like, the foundational framework there of RMBC was just like, okay, research. So psychographic primarily. What are the market's pain points? What are their hopes and dreams? What are their victories and failures? And this is all related to the core problem, right? So if someone wants to lose weight, New Year's is coming up, right? So sort of like, what are their hopes and dreams about losing weight? Because it's not like dropping 15 pounds. That's like cool. But if you go start doing research, and by the way, you do it on like forums, Reddit, like places like that, where people are sharing very openly and freely, and you see like very quickly when you can search like weight loss forums, keto diet forums, things like that, people are talking about wanting. There's a bathing suit they bought already, even though it's the winter, and they want to wear it in the summer, and they imagine their sister-in-law, who's always so skinny and pretty, looking at them and being like, wow, finally acknowledging them or their accomplishment. Or like a husband or children that they want to like look at them with like more respect and admiration, or it's just for them and feeling like they've more confidence in their life, right? It's these deeper things that they're hoping for. And if you look at their failures, it's like what's it been like when they failed in the past, where they bought that swimsuit and it didn't. They got to the summer and they were still overweight, and how did they feel? Because we don't want to beat down our prospective customer, but we want to relate to them. Be like, maybe you failed in the past. Maybe, you've had an experience like this, and it can be one of the most frustrating things. And we want to show them that they're understood, that we truly understand, who they are and what they've gone through. And if people feel understood, it's like building rapport in sales, right? If they feel understood, they're much more likely to then listen to you and trust you and let you guide them, because you actually understand them. So often it's like going to the doctor's office and you've got some bump that you've been super worried about, and the doctor just comes in and goes, yeah, it's fine, and like walks away, right? And you're like, man, like you in your head, you have all this stuff you want to tell the doctor, and like the context, the background, the doc doesn't care, and you feel like so unseen and frustrated and things like that. And so that's how a lot of marketing is. They don't take the time on the psychographic side. So, but it's really just the same questions. And then the other couple questions is really just about competitor products, right? What other solutions have they used? What was their experience like? What did they like? What did they not like? And so you can kind of compare and contrast. But that's it for research. But you do that same thing every time. It's a good foundation. And then I can go to the mechanism if you want real quickly and share that, or you tell me, Mark.
Yeah, please do. I mean, to me, when I hear research, the R in there, it's basically understanding your audience, pain points, the solutions, what do they want to see in their life, not necessarily just speaking to how, but more of the why, right?
Yeah.
All right. So cool. Let's move on to the next section here, the mechanism. You've done the research. We've gotten the R out of the way, which obviously you build out the framework and show that framework for doing the research in your program. What's the mechanism piece?
So the unique mechanism, we separate that into like just two parts. So there's the unique mechanism behind the problem and the solution. So I'll share examples and why this matters. So going back to weight loss as an example, imagine basically for anything that your product solves for, it's very, 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 very rare that the prospective customer has never tried to solve that problem before. So if we go to weight loss, it's like they've probably tried other diets. Maybe they did Weight Watchers, they went on keto, they did Atkins back in the day, they tried some lemon detoxing they saw on TikTok. Like they've tried a whole bunch of stuff. And yet here they are still not, where they want to be. And so part of it is finding a way to explain like, well, here's the real reason why you haven't gotten results yet. So for example, maybe you discover that there's some, previously unknown hunger hormone. There is a hunger hormone, but imagine there's one that no one's heard of that scientists at Harvard find, and it's like totally legit science. And they're talking about how, like basically this hormone, if it controls hunger, but as we get older, we have less of the hormone, right? And it's in the gut, let's just say. I'm making this up, but it's pretty like kind of what we find often happens, stuff like this. And then you find that the ingredients in your weight loss supplement, for say it's a supplement, help to like increase the activity of that hormone. And you can kind of like, oh, hey, okay, like, so one of the real reasons why, you've had so much difficulty controlling cravings and appetite in the past could be because of this hormone. Like there's a bunch of research, but we didn't know about it until just now. It's just like new discovery. And so if you didn't know about it, how could you have done anything about it? And so maybe that's why you struggled, but we've created this, new breakthrough. Now we're getting to the solution that activates the hormone. So, well, if the hormone controls hunger, but it gets deactivated as we age and this activates it, what could that do for your weight? Right. And so you're just sort of like taking, like, here's the real reason you haven't had success yet, or what could be the real reason. You don't have to say it definitively. And then you're, sharing how your practice is a solution. So let me give you one more example. So it's not all about health. Like, I love doing an example where it's like a fishing pole, because people always go, well, I'm selling a commodity. So how do I, how do I do a mechanism for a commodity? So, if I do like a fishing pole, I'm like, well, what's unique about it? And so like, maybe what are the materials? What are like is it made from titanium or graphite or aluminum? I don't even know all the materials, right? But if you look at the material, is that material different than what other fishing poles are made from? And then how does that affect the fishing pole? Maybe it's lighter. Okay, cool. Because if you do research first, you'll see people talking about how a lot of people as they get older have joint pain, hip pain. They don't like standing. They don't have as much strength. They don't have as much mobility. So a lighter pole is actually more valuable to them because they can fish for longer and cast with less like wear and tear on their joints. So something you can talk about how if you discover that the pole you're selling has a lighter weight, even if the materials are different, but the weight's just lighter, you could turn that into like, hey, here's the reason, most fishing poles aren't actually doing you a service and are making you sore and achy, whereas this one is lightweight. And so it's, you're able to fish for longer. You can have more fun. It could be like that the RPMs of the reel is faster. Maybe there's some research that means you're less likely to lose a fish. There's so many things that you can then take and compare and contrast. So, I think you do it for everything. I mean, turmeric, how's the supplement thing again, but I just did this, right? How's it encapsulated? Because not all encapsulations are the same. Turmeric's not water soluble, but if you get the right capsule that has like higher solubility, it means more gets absorbed. In fact, 185 times more, and it's backed by all these clinical trials. I'm not trying to go in the weeds. The point is there's always these things, and if we don't look at them, then going back to what you said before of like there's so much copy, so many words, so many products. So it's really like a differentiator. The difference is that really trying to show the mechanism of the problem and the solution in a very sequential and logical way.
Brilliant.
Fire hose people.
That was the word that I was thinking is differentiator. Because you've done the research and you have a pretty good understanding of the problem of that pain point that your reader has. Well, then you can go and try to pinpoint this is why it hasn't worked and this is why it will work when you buy product X because of this method, this release capsule, this type of lure, etc. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And obviously we can't get into all the nuts and bolts here. But brief and copy, why don't you give us a quick overview of brief and copy, which are the last two parts to the RMBC method?
Yeah, so brief, I'll be pretty fast on. It's really just a series of questions that you're asking before you start writing. So like what is the product? But instead of just saying the product is a fishing pole, kind of in this brief document, you kind of write out like as if you were selling the fishing pole to the prospect, write it in the brief. What's the background story or discovery story, right? So did Mark, create the fishing pole because he was tired of a sore arm? Was it a team of expert fishermen? Was it, right? Like what is that story, the origin story of the product or the brand or whatever it is, and write it like you would in the actual sales copy. And the reason you do that is because you sort of go through piecemeal and suddenly you realize when you go to write your sales letter or your long form copy, so C for copy, you're like, oh crap, I have most of this already written, right? Like, because part of the copy, it's really like the lead, which is like your opening, grabbing attention, bringing them in, your prospect in, curiosity, things like that. There's a background story like, hey, me or someone, like me used to be like you, in pain or struggling. Here's like sort of the story. There's a unique mechanism of the problem, right? I was struggling, then I discovered that this was the real cause of my problem. The solution, unique mechanism of solution. Like then I realized, well, if this is the problem, could we just do this? And it turns out with some tweaking, it worked. And then there's sort of the product build up and reveal. So I got together with the team. We spent all these countless nights eating Chinese food and working around the clock. And suddenly product was born, right? And then the close, which is really just telling them, hey, now you've heard all about product, it's time for you to buy it. And, selling them on it and why it's better than others. And there's a bunch of like little sub steps in there, but really like that's the structure. So go back to like RMBC, it's like, okay, if the lead is really calling out the prospects, getting their attention, speaking about their pain point, promising a solution, making them really feel like understood, then we did all that in our psychographic research. And that whole part about the unique mechanism of the problem and solution, well, we did that in the mechanism phase because we wrote it out. And then even the background story, well, we did that in the brief. We introduced a product, well, we did that in the brief. The close is very formulaic, it's the same thing. So suddenly when you go to write copy, it's like pretty much all written for you. And then it becomes way, way easier. Because what I found personally would happen is I would start to write, have good ideas, not really know where to start, or even if I knew where to start, I'd get like a page or two in and then just get frozen and not know where to go next. So having it all like this is where you basically are much less likely to get writer's block or get stuck or to kind of freeze. And so that's what makes it so powerful.
Love it. Love it. Thanks for kind of bringing that all together here for us, Stefan, because basically what you're telling me here is if you have the right prep, if you do all the right preparation, it makes it really easy to write.
Yeah.
It makes it much
really
easier to type. Yeah. Because I think, when I think about copywriting, what that says to me is, I'm just going to go and type something on Facebook, or I'm going to type something into my email list without actually going back and doing the research and better understanding who I'm typing it for, what are their pain points, why am I different, and kind of thinking through that before I even bust out the keyboard. That makes a lot of sense. And by the way, y'all, we are just scraping the surface here because I'm kind of rushing to get to AI because I'm obsessed with this topic. But you can find out more at spg.fun/research. Guess what? I'm making it super easy. I'm going to put a link right below so you can learn more about this method and how you can stop just typing and start selling. For Pete's sake, stop typing all the words, start selling more. All right, let's go. All right. Now that I've gotten that off my chest, Stefan, let's talk about artificial intelligence because it is all the rage. In December, we had a program called ChatGPT go completely viral, which is basically an AI writer. It's artificial intelligence. It's actually going to write stories. It writes transcripts. It writes all kinds of stuff. So, Stefan, should I be worried? Am I about to lose my job to a robot that's just going to type everything out for me? What's going on here?
So it's a huge topic. I'm obsessed just like you are. I think I have to be because I do think it's an existential shift, not a threat, but there's a shift happening. And I think a lot of copywriters will actually be out of a job, but I think they're generally going to be the copywriters who were in it for the wrong reasons, who were sort of not ever learning the fundamental structure and sort of like all these important elements, essential elements of effective messaging and copywriting and things of that nature. But even sort of just like content writing, I think the shift is that you're going to be more of like a engineer, architect type of person who is assembling pieces and also refining and fine tuning them versus the generator of content. So for me as a copywriter, I mean, it's amazing. Like I'm producing, what used to take me back in the day when I was like, trying to change my life and doing 12 VSLs a month, that was insane, right? There's basically nobody's ever done that at that like level. And by the way, they were good, right? The company grew to 9 figures, and it's basically been a 9-figure company every year since like 2014. So that alone has helped to, get to my $1 billion in sales mark, right? And that's just one client. But it wasn't sustainable. I did it for like 6 months, 7 months, and I started trying to build like an agency internally for them and other things, but it was very difficult. But normally if you hire me right today, I'd be like, yeah, it's like 50 grand and it's going to take 8 weeks, right? Sometimes I charge more like 100 grand, 75 grand, but 50 grand, like I really want this, I really want buy a new house, need some money, 50 grand, whatever, right? It doesn't actually take me 8 weeks though. It might take me like a week, some change, but now like it takes me like a day, right? 2 days. And it's because of all the prompts and all of the stuff I just described. Like for research, it's like doing the right prompts on ChatGPT, for example. Like, because so many people try, ChatGPT and then they try one crappy prompt, it doesn't work, and then they think it's like, they're like, oh, that was not there yet. But it's like, you're not asking the right prompts, so you're not thinking about assembly. You're a builder, you're an assembly like line person in a way. And that's not a bad thing. Because like write me an infomercial script, it's gonna suck, right? But if you're like, give me a emotional 500-word journal entry from a 40-year-old woman, from the perspective of a 40-year-old woman who keeps struggling to lose weight and can't. She feels frustrated and stuck and doesn't know what to do. And ask ChatGPT to do that, you'll get really good stuff. And you can take a bunch of that, psychographic, emotional stuff, and then put it into your copy. Right? What are 20 emotional lines that a woman who's struggling with weight loss might say to her husband at 3 a.m. in the morning? Like, you're not asking the right prompts. Not you, but some people aren't. You do that, you got like crazy lines of like, and you'd be like, maybe so, like, a joint when I did it, it came up with this idea of like, it's like living with an invisible illness. And I'm like, well, there you go, right? I'm like, first line of copy. It's like an invisible illness that haunts you. Nobody understands. Like, but right. So it's not that it writes the entire thing, but it's like I can get these prompts and get ideas. So if RMBC already helped make writing easy, now it's like I'm never getting stuck because it's going to give you prompts and give you things of that nature. I'm kind of tangenting on. So should you be worried? Like, yeah, like, but only if you don't have the competency. But if you realize the skill of it, then you can start assembling things and really produce better quality work in less time. It should be a force to unleash creativity, right? Not something that takes away from it.
Well, a lot of really good points there. I'm using AI in my podcast production agency now. I use AI to help with show notes and all sorts of different things. But you're right. It's not to the point where I just say, okay, computer, write me out some great copy. It requires some hand holding, some massaging, if you would. There's no doubt in my mind that by having frameworks in our own minds, it's going to help us to leverage the AI more quickly. So ideas like the RMBC method make a lot of sense to me. I was talking about this in my group program today, where we talk about podcasting and developing frameworks. The concern that I have, Stefan, for people in the creative world, though, is that I think the outside perception is going to be that, why would I hire that person to do it when I can just have a computer do it, right? Why am I paying someone for 8 weeks of work when it only takes them 2 days to do all the work? You know what I'm saying? So I wonder, is this going to impact the amount of compensation that we get as creators because more and more people can flood the market? Is that a concern?
I think it's a concern, but I think with AI, so much of it becomes about, like, how do I say this? It's more quantity and economies of scale. And so as an example, we've sold some packages recently to people who, are direct response companies, where it's like, hey, we'll do 10 VSL scripts, we being myself and my 2 partners, and a bunch of my ventures who are both incredible copywriters. And we're like, hey, we'll do 10 scripts for you for 150,000. And they're like, deal, right? So I've closed like over $500,000 in new sort of revenue in the last 30 days for selling that. So it turns out it's actually a lot easier to sell that than to sell one for 50. So obviously not everybody needs, you have to find people who can work with quantity. Although I think because AI enables such exponential quantity, you're going to see more of that. And so one of the solutions I think is so it's funny because we lowered our price, but we're charging more and making more, right? So, and the time that it takes us is roughly the same. We're not taking, as in like to do 10 is what it used to take to do one. So we're not really even doing more work. I mean, right now a bit because we're really down in these processes. There's a lot of stuff that, to make it efficient for us to then scale that even further. But so it changes, but it doesn't destroy it. So I think that's one part. And I think the other part is that there's going to be people who say that the whole sort of like, well, the machine can do it, but if they keep getting not great results, right? Because they don't modify it at all, like then they're just gonna, because it's really no different from my perspective in a way to what we have now, where there's clients out there for copywriters who go, I can get someone on, Upwork to do this for $100. Why am I going to pay $10,000? And it's like, good luck with that. And then, they come back a month, 3 months, 6 months later, like, well, I hired 100 guys at, $100 and I'm still not where I need to be. So now I'll pay you 20,000, right? They kind of realize it. So I think that there's going to be some people who use that as an excuse, just like there's people who use cheap labor, kind of like through like freelancing platforms as an excuse before. But I think the smart clients they really care about the outcome more than anything else. And so I don't think it's an existential threat. But I think, content marketing, like doing SEO content writing is in way more danger in the immediate future. But even there, again, like how do you sell packages? How do you say like, I'm going to make sure that it's Google proof. I'm going to, I think you have to expand beyond being like it's fine. I mean, you are like a technician because you're sort of assembling things, but then you also need to expand to offer more services and more like ancillary support services. And I think that's sort of the shift. So I think there's shifts that are happening, but I don't think it's an existential danger from that perspective.
Well, I think that your perspective on how to tackle it it's probably one of the best perspectives I've heard, which is, maybe not just focus on one aspect of what you do, which is the copywriting, but how can I develop a more comprehensive solution, which makes what I'm offering unique? And furthermore, to your point, the client base that you serve matters a lot too, because if you're targeting rich, wealthy business owners that have a larger budget, you're going to be less replaceable, I think, than say someone who's, I don't know, writing $100 in copy for one client a week or something like that, trying to increase your skill level and leveraging the tool to land bigger accounts to provide more comprehensive solutions, right? Am I kind of summarizing that accurately?
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to speak over you.
Well, because that makes a lot of sense to me, because I'm worried, right? And there's a big push for universal basic income because there's this belief system that there's so much tech, there's robots and AI that's doing so much that we're just going to be these meat bags like in the Matrix. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to be a meat bag. I want to be building and creating. And so I love this idea of building out a framework, building out leveraging the tools for scalability, and creating comprehensive solutions. But I don't know, I still feel like it's going to be very difficult for people that are just starting out or at the very beginning of their journey to get in, because they're going to be competing at a lower price point, if that makes sense.
It does. It's hard to say, because I think that there's two sides in a way. One side is like, yeah, but then at the same time, if things are more automated and there's almost more of like more of a universal skill and being sort of a project manager, like I put these predictions. I did like a post on Facebook with like 13 predictions about AI, and then I don't know what it's got, like it's not crazy, but I got maybe like 100 shares, which is pretty good for me for Facebook, right? It's not bad, and it got pretty good engagement and stuff. But then I did like a 14th prediction, which is I think for the next 5 years, actually I think operators are going to be like the most in demand, like project managers, operators, because yes, now a company can put out exponentially more content or create, more assets, but they still need to be able to deploy them. And you're adding in more moving parts, and that makes everything more complicated. And you still actually need a lot of humans involved to do that stuff. So like, you know, you need people who can sort of be like operators, integrators, project managers. So one thing is I think that's a really safe career, because even if like the marketing funnel is automated, you're still gonna have a team of people that are managing the AI, and you need to manage the people and work towards certain outcomes. It's not gonna get so smart in the next 5 years, probably not even 10 years, that like people are completely obsolete. Now, the fact that it might happen in the 2030s or 40s is still terrifying. So I totally get it. But at least short term, I think we're pretty safe. And then, yeah, so somebody comes in now, it's like they are able to shortcut a lot of this whole learning curve that would have to get mastery. And so if they can just be good at assembling and putting things together and being creative, right? Going back to creativity, how do you do in creative ways? I mean, the thing I've been studying recently more is like Salesforce, right? And there's Mark Benoff, or however you say his name. And essentially Salesforce is like I forget, you know, the revenue is insane, like $150 billion company or whatever it is. And, you know, but what's funny is when you read about them, and they're sort of like the one of the first SaaS companies, software as a service, and they basically took like a contact management solution and provided it like over the internet. So instead of having to install, you know, floppy disks or CDs, you know, you're able to get the software through the web, and then it moved into the cloud and could be remote and all these things. But if you look at Salesforce, it's like, okay, well, what are they really selling? Contact management, like, you know, a way to manage your lead flow and pipeline, like through the internet. Like, it wasn't really that innovative. They moved early on it, and then over time they've created this massive ecosystem around it. So they've created all these ancillary things, including like a whole class of experts who help with Salesforce implementation. There's Salesforce admins. There's this massive ecosystem. So I think the way you have to look at it is like, instead of being a single component, now you have to look at how can I create, going back to what I said before, how do I create ecosystems? And so is it really like harder for the new person, or is it just that they need to learn a different skill and focus more on a different skill than they would have had to pre-AI? You know, I think that's the way I look at it for now.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. And, you know, I think that's why it's so important that we as after hours entrepreneurs start building out our side hustle, our business, our idea now, because the more you can build onto it, the more value you can provide. I do this with my agency. When I'm launching a show for a client, I've got a ton of resources, from videos to articles to worksheets. I have a community that people are a member of, and you get to bang out questions, and we do weekly sessions. So that didn't just happen overnight, right? It started out, I did one episode, and then I worked with one client, and it kind of builds out over time. And so much like you, Stefan, I'm much more optimistic about AI personally and in my business. But what I really want to do is help people out there leverage the tools now, get into it now, while you still have massive opportunity. Gosh, we have so much opportunity right now. It's just an amazing time to be alive. Amazing time. I mean, I grew up with road atlases. We didn't have any GPS. Yeah. We had Polaroid like, oh my gosh, when I think about what payphones, like, anyway, I digress. All right, Stefan, get ready. We're going to go into the world famous rapid fire section. But before we go into that, where's the best place for us to find you?
So yeah, in addition to that, spg.fun/research, I'm on Instagram at Stefan Georgi. But that's really probably the best place. You know, you can find me on YouTube and Twitter, though I'm not super active on Twitter, but stefanpaulgeorgi.com is my website, but frankly needs a little bit of updating. So Instagram, or get on my email list, which you can do through spg.fun/research.
Bam, boom. And I got you right below. I'm going to make it super easy. Definitely a man to keep in touch with and to follow, because he's going to help you write better. And let's face it, the better you write, the more you sell. All right, cool. Stefan, ready for the rapid fire? You ready? You buckled up?
I'm ready.
All right, boom. What is the scariest movie you've ever seen?
I don't like scary movies that much, so I'm going to go with like a movie called El Orfanato, which means the orphanage, and it's like a Spanish movie. It's not even that scary, but probably the scariest one.
It sounds scary, but
it's good. It's scary orphan kids.
Where is your favorite place to deliver sales copy?
What do you mean by deliver?
Like, is it on social media? Is it via direct mail? Is it email? Where's your favorite place to send sales copy?
You know, through websites and using video format.
Websites and
Like landing
video.
pages. Yeah.
If you could be any kind of animal, what would you be?
Like a bear.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I like that. You get some hibernation time too, so it's not
Yeah.
so bad. What is, if you could live anywhere in the world, where would you live?
Probably where I'm living now, which is like the Scottsdale area. Pretty happy where I live.
Love that answer. What would you order for your last meal on Earth?
I want the bolognese from Bootlegger Italian Bistro that's in Las Vegas. Been there since like the 1920s or 30s. I'd get their little garlic bread things with the marinara at the start, Caesar salad. Bolognese is the best bolognese. I've had many hardcore Italians go and they all agree it's like the best bolognese ever. They have the Classico martinis, which I do gin for. They've got like a spicy little olive in there. So I've had a couple of those. And I'm not even a big dessert guy. I mean, I'd get one because it's my last meal, but really it'd be all about that bolognese and Classico martini.
I'm down. I love me some bolognese. That's good stuff.
So good.
If you could sit next to anyone on a plane, who would you sit next to?
Elon Musk. Basic, but yeah, Elon Musk for sure.
Very interesting character. And final question here for you. If you had 10 seconds with yourself 10 years ago, what would you say?
Most people just stay the course, like most people do. They underestimate what they can, or overestimate what they can do in a month, underestimate what they can do in a year. Just extend it out to 10 years. If you just stay the course, you'll be in a good place.
I love that. Words of wisdom, Stefan. Thank you very much, brother.
Thank you.
Boom. Thanks for listening to today's episode. Smash the subscribe button if you have not yet. There is more content coming to you. And I want to just stress one thing that I think is really important about this episode. And that's if you're going to build up that six-figure year, that six-figure business, it's really important that you build out frameworks. My podcast company has a podcast launch kit. It's a podcast launching framework. It's a framework that's proven. I understand it. It works. It makes it very easy for me to scale up my offerings and to build modules and checklists. I'd really challenge you, if you find something that's working, if you find something that you're passionate about, if you find something that people are willing to pay you for, build a framework. Build your framework. Watch what happens. All right, that's all I got for you today. Thanks for listening to the After Hours Entrepreneur. Thanks for subscribing. We'll catch you here next time on the show. Go take action. Peace.